I grew up in a very tech-heavy family. Had been adjacent to the crypto and Web3 spaces for a good chunk of my life, about as long as those spaces have existed, and have always been fairly independent. So after high school, I went off to college for a year. Pandemic hit halfway through my second semester, and I said, screw that. I'm going to go do something else. So I'd started a company at that point, wound it down about a year later, was looking for projects to work on, and made my way into the Web3 space. Was working on, building products there, and that's when Shloms came to me and said, why don't you help me blow up a Lamborghini? And I said, absolutely, I would love to. How could I ever say no to that? So the idea came straight from the artist Shloms. I had been friends with him online for about a year and a half before we met in person. And, I met him in person finally at an event in New York. And he said, why don't you come help me blow up a Lamborghini? Which that's obviously a yes. There's nothing that could possibly make me say no to that. So Shloms is an anonymous conceptual artist, specifically in the NFT art space. So NFTs are exclusively his medium. He had started making NFTs a little over a year ago, so February of 2021 was his first NFT drop, if I remember correctly. He had this piece that was 1x1, and it was a single pixel, 0x0 that was completely blank. But the work that preceded Car was called Fountain, spelled FNTN. In a crypto-native ode to Marcel Duchamp's Fountain, he took a urinal, and instead of just presenting that, he smashed it, physically fractionalized, as he likes to say, and sold each of the shards as NFTs. It was a very, very similar depiction. We put much more thought into it for the Car project, as it was, much more valuable pieces, you can say. There was a whole lot of time spent getting the lighting perfect, the orientation of the piece perfect, but it was in form quite similar, but a very, very different artistic vision behind the two pieces. The team behind it came together fairly quickly. We all pretty much joined right at the beginning of December. It was a lot of like, hey, we want to do this. We need someone who can do this. Do you know someone? And we built out an absolutely amazing team through, the connections that people on the team already had, bringing people in. Most of the team stays fairly anonymous, me included, but it was incredible working with the team because all of us were 100% focused on this same ridiculous, crazy goal of blowing up a Lamborghini on a timeline of less than 100 days. And we all pretty much became family instantly. First week of December was my first week working on this project. Team met up in Miami around Art Basel with essentially just, we want to blow up a Lamborghini. What's next? And very quickly it was like, okay, we got to pick a car. Originally we had thought about doing a Countach because I think that is the aesthetic epitome of Lamborghini. The problem is that they were 3 times as expensive as the Huracan. And for me personally, as someone who does like cars, I knew that if anyone who we were trying to purchase a Countach from heard anything about what we were going to do with it, they would absolutely refuse to sell it to us. A Huracan, on the other hand, there's a bunch of them. The one we got had previously been a rental, had about 50,000 miles, had this disgusting chrome wrap on it in horrible shape. It had a little aero kit that had been added on, and that had like holes in it from getting scraped on curbs and ramps and everything. Like I could stick my finger straight up into the like little front lip spoiler that they'd put on. And that was one where it's like, this is really the Lamborghini that deserves to be blown up. I think that there is art that is purely aesthetic, and I think there is art that is conveying a meaning. This is both. So, the actual act of blowing up a Lamborghini wasn't just, we wanted to blow up a car. In crypto specifically, there's this meme of sorts where people cry, when Lambo? And they're essentially asking, when is this coin or this NFT or this project gonna become worth enough money for me to buy a Lamborghini? And for all of us on the team, and Shloms especially, we really don't like that I'm only in it to get rich quick attitude. So the whole point of this was everyone cries, when Lambo? Here's your Lambo. It's a car at the end of the day. That's why the project was called Car. You can use crypto and Web3 to build much, much, much more meaningful things that will outlast you as an individual and have far more impact than you as an individual ever could. And that's what we think is great about it, not we made a bunch of money super quick. It's a crappy example of a Lamborghini Huracan, but also the Chrome wrap sort of embodies that garish, get rich quick attitude that we were calling out against better than any other Lamborghini could. From there, we had the car, purchased that early to sort of be like, well, we've got the car, we've got to do the rest of the project now. So we knew with one shot blowing up the car, we needed to do something to be able to get some learnings ahead of time. So we had gotten in contact with the explosives expert we worked with, and it was funny, after the project had finished, like every other contractor we had worked with came to us and said, I can't believe we actually did this. You know, we hear people call us to do ridiculous stuff like this all the time, and then, you know, they never follow through with it, which is why we like took forever to get back to you guys, because we figured it was essentially a prank call. But we had talked with the explosives guy about our plan. We brought on an engineer to actually develop the entire explosives plan, and we knew that we wanted to do a test car. So we had a 1999 C5 Corvette as our test car that we got from Copart. That thing had 250,000 miles, like, was essentially just end of life, not really any damage though, and it was about the best analog we could get to a Huracan without spending Huracan money on another Huracan. So a few weeks before we blew up the Lamborghini, we had this test car that we blew up, and blew up a test drivetrain for it as well. That was one of those moments where the project immediately became so much more real again. Just feeling the shockwave, seeing the car blown to bits, and taking some of those pieces to the studio to do some test shoots and figure out what we'll be doing for the pieces of the Lamborghini. You know, once we had blown that up, everything had started coming together at that point. And there was still more to work out for the Lamborghini explosion itself, a lot more prep to do to the car. We had worked out getting high-speed cameras, drone cameras, all of that. It was this massive production. We had probably close to 60 or 70 people on site for the day of the Lamborghini explosion. And then that day went off without a hitch. Everything happened on time. Everything went super smoothly. Everyone was extremely happy with the output of it. But it's not like we got to rest. Immediately from there, it was picking up all the pieces, cleaning, sorting through them, transporting them to the studio. And then at the studio, we had to go through and sort and number all of the pieces. Filming the big pieces, like the large chunks of the frame, came first, because moving those around the studio, we had this like industrial-sized turntable set up for it. And we spent a solid week of 12, 13, 14-hour days getting all of these pieces filmed, and then having to edit all of them to prepare for the auction itself. So the auction happened right at the beginning of March, and then we got over $2 million from that. Pieces got distributed through Acclaim to everybody, and that was the project. The art itself isn't the explosion. That's the process of making the art. The art itself is this piece of a Lamborghini engine block that, you know, is completely separate from the original thing. Having the piece rotate in empty space, in lighting that lets you see all of the detail of it. Part of the artistry behind it is that you can take something that many people view as a work of art, do something that many of those people would see as absolutely destroying this valuable work of art. But in itself, you're getting to all of the detail that so many people never actually see as part of it. And at the same time, it is just removing the status of the object for being a certain make and model of car, right? We've all heard that a car is worth less than the sum of its parts, but in this case, you make all the parts non-functional and charred and burnt and twisted, suddenly it's, parts are worth even more than they could ever have been before.
Premier Financial Services makes it easier and more affordable than you could possibly imagine to own your dream car. Their Simple Lease is one of the most powerful tools in the world of exotic car financing. You get all the benefits like the tax savings and the low payments of a lease with all the additional benefits that you normally find in a traditional finance arrangement. You can build up equity, you can pay it off early, you can trade in and out of cars because you get a very clear and easy to understand amortization table to understand what your payoff will be any month throughout your term. And all the while, the amazing team from Premier Financial Services will be right there to help you along the way. They've been supporters of the VINwiki channel now for 5 years in a row, so we can't thank them enough for that, but mostly we're thankful for the fact that they can help you make it easier than ever to own your dream car. Check them out now.